I'll have 3 carnitas tacos, extra lime, and hold the cilantro. The voice was unmistakable, even through the chaos of Mercado San Antonio's lunch rush. I froze mid-chop, my knife suspended over a pile of white onions, as Susan Sarandon, yes, the Susan Sarandon, stood just 3 feet away from me at the counter of my family's tiny taco truck. My heart hammered against my ribs as I watched her through the service window. Dressed in faded jeans and a simple white t-shirt, her auburn hair pulled back in a messy bun. No entourage, no security, no cameras. Just Susan Sarandon ordering lunch like any other customer on this sweltering Tuesday afternoon in East Austin. But what happened next would change everything. I thought I knew about fame, family, and the power of a simple meal shared between strangers. If this story is already making your heart race like mine was in that moment, please help me with a like and subscribe. I'm pouring my soul into building this channel, and I desperately need to reach my first 100 subscribers. You could be one of the first to join me on this incredible journey of real stories that matter. Trust me, you won't regret being part of this community we're creating together. Coming right up, my cousin Elena called out, her voice steady despite the way her hands trembled as she grabbed 3 corn tortillas. I couldn't blame her. We'd been running Tacos Esperanza for 8 years, serving construction workers, local families, and the occasional food blogger, but never anyone who'd grace the cover of People magazine. The late July heat pressed down on us like a heavy blanket, making the small space behind our truck feel even more cramped than usual. Susan stepped aside to wait, and that's when I noticed her studying the faded photographs taped to the side of our truck. Images of my grandmother's hands making tortillas, my uncle playing guitar at family gatherings, my little sister's first communion. These weren't decorations. They were our history, our reminder of why we started this business after my father lost his job at the plant. "These pictures are beautiful," Susan said, her voice carrying that warm, familiar tone I'd heard in dozens of movies. "This is your family?" Elena nodded, wiping sweat from her forehead with her apron. 4 generations of recipes. My great-grandmother brought them from Michoacan. I watched Susan's face soften as she leaned closer to study a black-and-white photo of my bisabuela grinding corn by hand. There was something in her expression, not the polite interest of a celebrity making small talk, but genuine curiosity, the kind that comes from someone who understands the weight of family stories. "Order up," I called, sliding the plate across the narrow counter. 3 perfect tacos, the carnitas glistening with rendered fat, topped with diced onions and radishes, a wedge of lime balanced on the side. Susan took her first bite and I held my breath. In 8 years of serving food, I'd never cared so much about a customer's reaction, but watching her close her eyes, chew slowly, and let out a soft sigh of satisfaction felt like winning an Academy Award myself. "My God," she said, opening her eyes. "This tastes exactly like—" She paused, and for a moment her famous composure cracked just slightly. "Like something I haven't had in 20 years. Did you subscribe yet? Help me reach my first 100 subscribers. This story is just getting started, and you won't believe what happens next." Elena and I exchanged glances. There was a story there, hanging in the humid air between us like morning mist. Susan took another bite, more slowly this time, as if she were trying to taste a memory. "I had a housekeeper when my kids were small," she said, seemingly to no one in particular. "Rosa. She made tacos on Fridays, always carnitas, always with this same seasoning. I could never figure out what made them so special." She looked up at us. "What's your secret?" "Orange peel," Elena said without hesitation. "In the lard while it renders, my great-grandmother's trick." Susan laughed, a real laugh that had nothing to do with cameras or interviews. "Rosa never told me that. She said a good cook never reveals everything." "Rosa sounds wise," I said, finally finding my voice. "She was. She helped raise my children, taught them Spanish, made our house feel like a home instead of just a place where famous people lived." Susan's voice grew quieter. "She passed away 5 years ago. I haven't had a proper taco since." The lunch rush swirled around us. Car horns honking, orders being called out in Spanish and English, the sizzle of meat on grills. But our little corner felt suspended in time. Here was one of America's most recognizable actresses, standing at our humble taco truck, sharing a piece of her heart with two strangers over a $2 taco. Rosa would have loved this place. Susan continued, gesturing at our setup with her half-eaten taco. She always said the best food comes from the heart, not from fancy kitchens. Elena smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her all day. She sounds like my bisabuela. She said cooking is how we tell people we love them. Exactly. Susan finished her first taco and reached for the second. You know, I'm in town filming a documentary about immigrant families in Texas. Would you mind if I brought my camera crew by sometime? I'd love to tell your story. My knife clattered to the cutting board. Elena's mouth fell open. A documentary? With Susan Sarandon? About us? We're not that interesting, I managed to say. Are you kidding? Susan shook her head. You've kept 4 generations of tradition alive, built a business from nothing, and you're feeding your community every single day. That's not just interesting, that's heroic. The word heroic hung in the air like the smell of cumin and lime. Heroes were people who saved lives, who fought injustice, who won Oscars for playing complex characters. We were just Elena and Miguel, slinging tacos from a converted Airstream trailer, trying to make enough money to keep the lights on and send our kids to college. But looking at Susan's face, I realized she meant it. In her eyes, we weren't just taco vendors. We were storytellers, keepers of culture, the backbone of America that rarely gets featured in Hollywood films. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, now's the perfect time. Help me reach my first 100 subscribers and be part of this amazing journey. These real stories need to be heard. There's one condition, Elena said, surprising both of us with her boldness. If you film here, you eat here. Real meals, not just for the cameras. Susan grinned. Deal. But I want the recipe for these carnitas. Absolutely not, Elena shot back. Some secrets die with us. They both laughed, and I realized I was witnessing something magical. The moment when celebrity falls away and what's left is just human connection, the kind that happens over good food and shared stories. Susan finished her tacos and reached for her wallet, but Elena waved her away. On the house for Rosa's memory. No, Susan said firmly. Rosa taught me that you never accept charity when you can pay your own way. It was one of her rules. She placed a 20 on the counter. Keep the change, but only because I know Rosa would have tipped well. As Susan turned to leave, she paused. What time do you close? 6, Elena called out. I'll see you tomorrow then, same order. But maybe you can tell me more about your bisabuela while I eat. We watched her walk away, disappearing into the crowd of downtown Austin like any other customer. But the $20 bill on our counter and the lingering scent of her perfume mixing with our carnitas told a different story. Did that really just happen? Elena whispered. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Miguel, got your number from the health department permit on your truck. This is Susan. Would Thursday work for the interview? And can you ask Elena if she'd be willing to demonstrate the tortilla-making technique her great-grandmother taught her? The world needs to see real artistry. S. I showed Elena the text, and she sank onto the small stool behind our prep station. A movie star wants to film us making tortillas. Not just any movie star, I said. Susan Sarandon, the woman who played Louise in Thelma and Louise, who fought for social justice before it was trendy, who raised 3 kids while building one of the most respected careers in Hollywood. And she wants our recipe, Elena laughed, shaking her head, which you're never giving her. Never. But we both knew that wasn't really what Susan wanted. She wanted what Rosa had given her family: authenticity, tradition, the feeling of being connected to something larger than fame or fortune. She wanted to taste home again, even if it wasn't her own. Over the next 3 weeks, Susan became a regular. She'd show up around 2 o'clock, after the lunch rush died down, always ordering the same 3 carnitas tacos. Sometimes she brought her documentary crew, capturing Elena's hands as they formed perfect tortillas, recording my uncle's stories about crossing the border with nothing but hope and my grandmother's recipes. But more often she came alone, sitting on the plastic chair Elena had started setting out for her, sharing stories about her children, about Rosa, about the loneliness that can exist even when you're surrounded by millions of fans. The day before filming wrapped, Susan arrived with a small wrapped package. Inside was a photo of Rosa, smiling broadly as she stood in Susan's kitchen holding a plate of tacos. "I wanted you to have this," Susan said. "Rosa would have loved knowing her recipe lives on through your family." Elena traced Rosa's face with her finger, tears threatening to spill. "She looks like someone who knew how to love people through food." "She did," Susan nodded. "Just like you do." That night, as we cleaned the truck and counted the day's earnings, Elena and I talked about legacy, not the kind that gets you star on Hollywood Boulevard, but the kind that gets passed down through recipes and stories, through the simple act of feeding people with care and intention. Susan's documentary premiered 6 months later. Hands That Feed, The Real American Dream, featured 12 families across Texas, but our segment opened the film. There we were, Elena's weathered hands shaping mesa, my voice explaining how food connects us across cultures and generations, our tiny truck representing something larger about community and resilience. The film won 3 Emmy nominations and sparked a nationwide conversation about immigration, tradition, and the businesses that form the backbone of American communities. But for us, the real victory was smaller and more personal. Every new customer who came because they'd seen our story, every young person who asked Elena to teach them to make tortillas, every moment when food became a bridge between strangers. Susan still stops by when she's in Austin, though she doesn't need our address anymore. She has it memorized. She never did get that carnitas recipe, but she got something better. The knowledge that some hungers can only be satisfied by connection, tradition, and the simple act of sharing a meal with people who understand that food is love made visible. And Rosa? Her spirit lives on in every taco we serve, every story we share, every moment when a celebrity discovers they're just as human as the rest of us, standing in line for lunch on a hot Tuesday afternoon in Texas. What would you do if your biggest hero walked into your workplace tomorrow? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible real-life stories that prove magic happens in the most ordinary moments.